As difficult as life can get, there's always something to learn. There's always a silver lining. I remember going through a very difficult loss in my family and thinking that this is the hardest thing I've gone through so far, right? And so, but thinking also, I'm probably going to be able to help somebody else go through their losses as they go on because I've had this experience and I know what it feels like to go through a loss like this. It might sound hokey or silly, but I do firmly believe that there is always a good side to every experience. It is part of the human experience. You cannot have the good without the bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Matt Drinkon. Welcome back to the Eternal Optimist podcast, where we offer hope. We offer you can do it to attitude by highlighting success stories and the challenges of the people out there who have done something amazing. And I have a guest on the show today who is doing amazing things each and every day on the front line as an educator. Someone that has come highly recommended today is Miss Taleen Stevens. And Taleen, first of all, welcome to the show from California. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
Crushing it. Fired up. It's Friday. I'm going tonight here on February 2nd. I'm going with the kids to Kate's Skate to go and do some skating. So that should be pretty fun. We're a month away from my book launch, so I'm super excited about that. So you ask how we're doing, and that's it. Pretty fired up.
You're just fired up? Doing great. Oh, that's awesome. Glad to hear it. Have fun skating tonight. Roller or ice?
Roller skating. I've actually never been ice skating. I've been to rinks before, and I've tried them on. Maybe it was on ice skates for a minute. Just skating on a blade. I don't know. It just sounds. Yeah. I watch it at the Olympics. It looks really cool. See them get down and do all that skating around the cones. But I've not done it before. Have you ice skated before?
Just as a kid, like I have a memory of being about 4 or 5 and ice skating. And my parents will always tell me this story. Like, I think I cut my finger a little bit on the blade trying to put it on. And then ever since I got like one nick, I was like, no, I'd rather go to the vending machine and have snacks. And they're like, you wouldn't even try again. And I'm like, so I'm in the process of trying to change that about myself. Like, even if I mess up or I hurt myself, I'm going to get back up and do it again, Yeah.
So. Oh, great. Yeah. Well, that feeds right into our podcast. I love it. Working on
excellent
things that are challenging. So let's start off this. So Taleen, give me 3 bullet points, if you don't mind, on just high level context to set our conversation up. What are 3 things about you that you might share with the audience to kick us off?
All right. 3 things about me. I'm going to start off with the basics because it really feeds into the higher level stuff. So I am a mom of 2. I've been married for almost 12 years and I have been an educator for 15 years, classroom based, and then homeschool. And then now I'm an instructional coach, specifically for language arts at our school and for kindergarten through 8th grade. And so that's one facet. Like, that's things that you would see on like a bio or whatever. But the next bullet point would be that because I'm a mom and because I'm an educator, I strongly, strongly believe that there is a way to do this better for our kids, right? So to educate them better, to teach them that there's so much more out there than whatever's written in a textbook, that learning is all around them and that there's always, always room to grow, even if you feel like you're an expert at something. And if you're not an expert at something, that's okay. And to learn from our failures and our mistakes. And, we do this through a variety of teaching methods, but one of my favorite ones is through project-based learning. And so to empower the adults that are in charge of kids to be able to embrace that mindset and then to subsequently empower the kids that they're with that mindset. So I've made it my life mission to do that. And so that's bullet point number 2 is like, that is my super duper life mission. And then bullet point number 3 would be that I'll go lighter. We just got a dog and it's very heavy on my mind because we are spending so much time with it and trying to train him, or her actually. And she's a puppy. And it's our first time getting a puppy and things like that. So, we are working together as a family to really try to set us up for success in the long run. But it is not unlike having a newborn, and it has been taking so much time. So
Yes.
anyway,
Okay.
but
So
we love her.
big moment here, not the moment of judgment, just the moment. I'm curious, what did you name your puppy?
So her name is Cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon Rose.
Yes. Yes.
My son's 7, my daughter's 5. My son was dead set on wanting to name our next pet Cinnamon. And so here we are. She's Cinnamon. And my husband begrudgingly agreed to that. He was like, no, but it is what it is, so.
Awesome.
And it's kind of hard for little kids to stay. So like we have friends who come over and they have toddlers and stuff. And they're like, what's your dog's name? And we're like, Cinnamon. And they're like, I can't, they can't pronounce it very well. So she'll be whatever variation of Cinnamon comes out of their mouth, Yeah.
I'm going to transport back to 1987. I'm 10 years old. I'm in 5th grade. Okay. We're getting a new puppy. We already have one named Candy. Candy, it's a little Pekingese puppy.
Oh, that's
Candy.
A great name.
Yeah, well, that's the name that she came with when we got her from the pound. So we got Candy, and then we got another Pekingese puppy just after that, and she was a newborn, so we had to name her, and I wanted to name her Phoebe because I'd been watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I had a crush on Phoebe Cates.
Right, yeah.
She was also in Gremlins, so I wanted to name the puppy Phoebe.
Okay.
And my mom and dad were like, no, she's going to be Taffy. So we have Candy and Taffy. I wanted Phoebe, but ended up loving Taffy. So I'm sure that everyone's going to love
That's so cute.
Yes.
You could just whisper Phoebe to her, be like, this is our name together. We're doing it together.
Yes. Well, let's go back to something that you just shared. One of the things that is important to you is the mindset of always room to grow. I love that. And learn from failures or mistakes. So I'd love to go back in time to a point in your life where you can look back and say, you know what, that was a real challenge for me. So go back in time, if you will. You can go yesterday or go all the way back to when you were born. But what's something that's been challenging for you in your life, Taleen, that we can share the story?
So one of the things that comes to mind just to the gut is like just my experience in school. It was challenging when I was probably in like upper elementary, 4th through 6th grade or so.
Okay.
I came from a Armenian school because I am Armenian. And but we lived about an hour away from that school. So there was a good portion of my life where we were commuting to and from the school. And then my parents were like, this is not sustainable anymore. We're going to have to send you to a school that's more local. And so we did that. And when I transferred to that school as a kid, aside from making friends, which was very difficult in the beginning, there were cliques already made and things like that. And navigating that whole, I really strongly remember what it's like to be a child trying to just fit in and to be invited to play games at recess and to do things like that. But I also really had a hard time keeping up with the workload. And in retrospect, it didn't even occur to me until I was an adult. In retrospect, I think I had a little bit of a language barrier, even though we had an English-speaking household and I was still speaking Armenian at school and with my grandparents and things like that, and my dad, because my dad's Armenian, my mom's not. And when I would go to school, I would read all the information, but I would not comprehend it. And then it was like mountains of paperwork that we had to do and worksheets and, comprehension questions and things like that. And I was just getting buried. And it was so, so difficult to navigate. I just felt like I was failing socially. I was failing academically. And it even got to the point where, my parents were doing their best to help me. And then eventually they got me a tutor. But the part that I think led to me needing a tutor is because I was dishonest. So in the 5th grade, we had report cards, that were sent to us every quarter. There's 4 quarters in a school year. And then the 3rd quarter report card, I got an F in science. And I needed to get the report card signed by my parents, and I was terrified to show them. And I forged a signature and I turned it in, let it go. And then I knew that the 4th quarter report cards were going to be mailed because it's summertime at that point. And so I was like regularly checking the mailbox over the summer, trying to just make sure that I could like snatch the report card before they saw it. And then I assumed that I would just bring up my grade in the fourth quarter. So it would average to be like a C.
Yeah.
And they beat me to it. They got to the report card before I did, and they looked at it and they were like, what happened? And they're like, I don't remember seeing this. And I tried gaslighting them as a 10-year-old would. And I would be like, no, you signed it. And they're like, no, we would have remembered that. And I got into so much trouble, not for the grade, but for forging a signature and lying. But then they realized, and they know, I was having a hard time. And they're like, well, we need to get you help. Like, if you're struggling with a subject, like, we're not going to punish you for it. We need to get you help. And I went and got a lot of tutoring. Excuse me. And sorry. I got a lot of tutoring.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'm going to mute for just a second so that I can cough.
Yeah, go right ahead.
How do I mute?
And as you do, let's see.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
If I can mute on here. Yeah, and those of you listening out there, this is like real time trying to figure out all this Riverside technology here. That brings up a question I have for you about this whole time in life, because I also remember very vividly whenever the report card would come out, you got to go home and get it signed. And I remember when the grades were really good, I was excited. I was ready for that praise, ready for that attaboy. And there were a few times that the grades were not exactly where I think my parents, especially my dad, expected them to be. And I was super nervous and scared to bring it home. All right. So you transferring schools, 4th to 6th grade, a girl who speaks fluent Armenian, who's trying to understand English comprehension. It's not easy. And your grade is an F. I mean, ultimately, why did you end up making that signature on there? Was it because just terrified of the look or the spanking or
the consequences?
What was that like in your home?
The disappointment or whatever, So my parents had really high expectations for grades. Academics were really important. My parents really drove home the fact that like nobody can take your education away from you. Like, this is something that you're working on and it's yours. No one can ever take it away from you. So, it was always really, and it's interesting because I learned how to read as a young kid, like 2nd or 3rd grade, fluent reader in both languages, but remembering everything I read was a big deal. And I struggled with that part of it. And so it took a second for the adults in my life to realize that I wasn't really comprehending what I was reading. And it was only apparent in the report card. And then it came along that way. And it was really like a balance between not understanding the information and also being overwhelmed with the workload for that age level. Right. And so, I remember it so vividly, and it drives a lot of what I do today. Like, I try my best to not forget that part of being a kid, because it's tough out there, and these kids need advocates and they need help, and they need to know that if they're messing up or failing something, it's not a reflection of them as a person. It's a reflection of a need that they have that we can help them with, So I don't want them to feel like lesser than because of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And we see that a lot on campus. I experience it a lot with my own children. And it's just, it really plays a huge part as to whether or not they feel successful in the long run, how they deal with those failures, how they're, behaving because of it. We can dive into that whole thing later too. Well, so it's really interesting.
That you're able to do that, because so many people will have this experience at a young age and they'll just compartmentalize it, keep it inside, never talk about it again. And then it gets to parenting their own kids, and it's the same thing that happened with their parents. And out of all the great stuff that our parents gifted to us, a lot of amazing stuff, because we're here today and we're doing fine. And there's still some of that challenge stuff that we as kids are learning to process. So how has your experience helped to guide you as a mom, and then B, an educator who teaches others? Because I think that's the whole essence of eternal optimism, is being able to take the stuff that happens in our lives, use it to our advantage to have an impact, So now that you've shared your story, you have awareness of all the stuff that's happened. How has this informed you and helped you as a parent to show up?
So I love that question because I have a specific example that can kind of show how this plays out as a parent. My daughter, she's my younger one, is really into art. She's 4 or 5, she started going into it really at 4 years old. She's 5 now. She loves drawing. She loves doing all these things, right? And we made a thing of it. Like we would sit down together, we would paint together, we would sketch together, we would do all these things. And I considered it like our bonding time. My son, we play video games together. That's our bonding time, right? Well,
what video game do you play? I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. What video game do you play with your son?
So I took it old school. Like we play the Switch. And so on the Switch, you can do Super Nintendo games. Yes. Like you can download all the retro games. And so it was important for me to start him off with all the classics that I grew up with as a kid. So we did Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, like things like that. And then Mario Kart. And then now he'll still go back to it. And he started playing Sonic and things like that. And then now we got the more upgraded version. And so like my favorite thing to do is Mario Kart Deluxe 8. Yes! That's my favorite pastime. Yes. And I like battle mode, specifically Bob on Blast. Like that's just my favorite. And it's what I use to like decompress. And then I'll just like take a 20-minute break, play it, and I'll play it with him and stuff like that.
Okay. We're not done here. Hold on 1 second. Most important question of the podcast. Okay. What character do you play as when you're playing Mario Kart?
100% of the time, a version of Yoshi. Sometimes it's pink Yoshi. Nice. Sometimes it's dark blue Yoshi. Who's your person?
I'm always the evil Toad. Always Toad. Because I love
always
just to be the small one that just sneaks up. No one's expecting him, and they just woohoo talk a little smack when they go by. Woohoo! And then they hit him with the blue shell, or they hit him in some way. I love
it. My husband is a Toad person too sometimes, but then he's been doing Tanuki Mario here and there.
Okay. So, excellent. Super serious stuff here, team. Super. Okay, so back to the example with your daughter. By the way, is this wonderful painting on the back of your recording back here? Is this your daughter's artwork behind you? Yes.
No. Oh. This I bought at Home Goods.
Okay.
This I painted for funsies.
Oh.
This I printed out on a computer.
Awesome.
So 3 different art forms.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
The giraffe in the bathtub spoke to me, so I really like it.
Yeah.
So I just put it and it's in the background. But then I realized if I sit a certain way, it looks like there's a giraffe growing out of my head. So then there's that too. And it just makes me giggle. So
I like it. I like the tile on the floor of that painting back there. And of course, I like anything with a long neck because I have a long neck. So.
Same. Yeah. That's why it spoke to me so much because you can't see it, but I'm 5'9". And so when I tell people my name, like I'm Taleen, it's like I'm tall and lean. And then they're like, oh, and they'll never forget. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so back to your daughter now that we come out of the rabbit hole here. Back to your daughter. Okay.
Yeah. So we would paint together and we still do, and we sketch together and we do things like that. And when she would make a mistake, she would get so incredibly frustrated. And I kept trying to remind her, like, painting and art is an incredible way to work with your mistake. Like, and your mistake might actually be something even better than what you originally planned. And so really trying to use art as the catalyst to try to shift her mindset about failing. But I can see she's really hard on herself. It's pretty naturally occurring to her. Like she just wants to do everything right the first time. And she doesn't want to make those mistakes. She just wants it to go well. And then also she'll look at my work and what I'm doing and she's like, oh, mine's not as good as yours. And I'm like, what? No, like it's not that. So then I try modeling messing up also, and I'll say it out loud. Like, oh no, I got this big ink blot in the middle of my paper. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. Oh, maybe I'll turn it into a bug or something like that. And it'll just be part of the scene, and things like that. And so it's a small example, but using those kinds of thought processes to kind of shift the mindset of being like, oh no, I messed up. It's ruined. Crumble it up, throw it in the trash. And I say, sometimes you do need to crumble it up and start over again. Or sometimes you can work with it. Sometimes you can paint over it. Sometimes you can erase it. we have to remind her that pencils have erasers for a reason, you know, and like these things happen and it's okay. So it's really interesting.
I love your story.
Yeah.
By the way, you're talking to someone who has a family of artists. Like I'm a sports
Oh,
person
nice.
and more analytical. My
Yeah.
wife is super creative. So we have very creative family members. And as a result of that, we happen to be in love with this particular character over here named Bob
Oh, I
Ross.
love
So
him.
I've
Yeah,
always
he's
got a
so
Bob
cute.
Ross or his cousin, Big Bob. I've always got a couple Bob Rosses around because we get these out whenever we make mistakes. We're actually teaching the kids that, hey, these are happy little accidents. Let's learn with them. So I love that
I love
you're
it.
teaching
I
lessons by
love it. I love it.
modeling. If there's a note taker out there, how are you modeling whenever mistakes are made? How you're modeling a graceful re-entry into, get back to it, or graceful learning from it. I love the way you're doing this, and I'm taking a note over here, working with your mistakes, and instead of making it a mistake, now it's an additive thing. It's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, metacognating is the term that they use in education. Like you're talking out loud through your thought process, right? And so I try to do that and it's not natural for me. It's not, it's like, it feels like you're narrating every thought that you have while you're going through something, as
Yes.
opposed to just thinking through it, problem solving, and then doing something on your own, which you're hoping the kids that you're working with do eventually, right? Like you want them to think through it quietly and then solve their problem. Like that's a life skill. But as the adult in charge, you have to be very explicit, even when it's uncomfortable and unnatural, you know?
I think
And
so.
then also, sorry, back to Bob Ross really quick. Have you guys done that Halloween costume yet where you're Bob Ross and she's the canvas?
No, tell me more. I'm going to Google that right
You,
away.
it's like a couple's costume, and then it's like the dress looks like a landscape, and so she'll wear that, or vice versa. You would be the landscape, and then she can wear the Bob Ross hair and outfit, and then it's like super cute. We
I'm,
haven't done it yet either, but it's on my list.
Oh, I just Googled this and I am on Amazon right now getting ready to order. Oh, there it is, everybody. You can get Oh, thank you for this suggestion. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this
You're
tonight.
welcome.
Okay, so
Yeah, why wait till October? So
okay, so for our listeners, I'm gonna share something a little bit different. And I didn't debate going this, we're just gonna go there. My wife and I,
okay.
we just had our 10-year anniversary, and we got this
Aw.
this gift for each other. And one of the parts of this gift is a section on role playing, and
Yeah.
role playing in a number of different ways. But the way that I'm kind of clued in on right now is role playing creatively, fun with the family. So our first thought might be some kind of romantic, like intimate thing, and there's part of that in the book. But
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
book is also doing like a role playing something with your family. So I'm imagining that we might have our next Halloween party that will be Bob Ross on the canvas, and the kids might be paintbrushes, or the kids might be canvases too. I don't know. Or maybe
You know what?
maybe all
You
of
can
us are
have
Bob
them,
Rosses and I'm a canvas. I don't know. What do you think?
and they can paint your costume. Like you can get pure white costumes or dresses or shirts or whatever, and then
Yes.
the whole family participates, makes the rest of the costumes, and there's a Bob Ross.
Okay, I like
That's
this,
involved.
and I'm going to actually take this into the education space because I work with some boards of education throughout the states, and one of the things we do is on-site experiences where we get in there and coach them on building trust and playing and having fun at work.
Yeah.
So what I'm imagining, because I gifted everyone that's part of this one particular group I coach, everyone got a Bob Ross on the first event that we had. It's a symbol
I love
of
it.
whenever we need to politely ask someone to pause because they're just over talking. We pull this guy out. He's a reminder to wrap it up. So I'm thinking that the
I
next
love
big
it.
event, since I'm 6'7" and I'm a large person, I might just wear like an all white bodysuit of some kind, and of course keep it appropriate and professional. But maybe even put on this suit like a canvas on the front and have them come paint in some way, shape, or form, or maybe just give everyone a Bob Ross wig and have them go paint their vision or something. But I like there's so many ways to model.
It really
Yeah,
is. And then they can
yeah.
even take that activity into the classrooms and do things like that. I love it. There's so much you can do there.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot.
Well, so how are
I
you
love it.
taking these challenges that you experienced, at a young age, adapting and the parental expectation? How are you now taking this into the classroom in your teaching?
So a lot of it has to do a couple things. One of my main goals is to collaborate really well with the families that are involved with their kids, and to remind them on day one, and even before day one, if I have an opportunity, that we are in this together. It takes a village to raise a child. And for this year, I'm part of this village. So you let me know how I can support you with your goals for your kiddos. And I'm going to do the same for you for how you can support me with your kiddos while they're in my classroom. And then we can work together, and we have this open line of communication. And then also, after the first day of school, I highly recommend people do this. I don't have my own classroom anymore. I teach teachers. That's my job now.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend that my teachers reach out in the first day, if possible, but first day or two of school, individually to each family, and make that positive connection home. Even if that kid was a lot on day one, find something about them that was really, really good, and bring it home to the parents so that they know that every time they hear from you, it's not always bad news, and you're always, and you're training your mind to look for the positive, even when something presents to be incredibly difficult. So, if you have a kid that just is a lot of energy, and they're running around the room, and they're not following your directions, and they're really difficult to get to do what you need them to do in those times, you can work with their energy. You can say, okay, this kid has to move. But when you communicate with the family, say, I love the energy that your kid brings to my class. It just makes it so much more fun. And it is going to inspire me to think of ways to make sure that I can keep him or her engaged in my class in a different way that I might have not thought about before, right? And so you are training yourself to think about and look for the good.
I love it.
And then when I'm working with the kids, to really keep in mind that these people are people. They come with their own set of skills, strengths, needs, all of those things. And so to have a couple tricks up my sleeve, or ways that I need to teach a concept in order to make it stick for them. And not everybody's going to be performing at the same level. Not everybody comes in speaking the same language.
Yes.
We are in LA County. So we have a large subset of multiple backgrounds and ethnicities and languages and things like that. And so in order to connect with them, you remember they're humans, they have needs. You connect with them first. You have to make that connection with them to make them want to come to school, want to be in your space, and want to learn before you address any sort of academic rigor that they might be coming across, right? And then when it comes time to teach them a new concept or to do something, you might have them approach it in a physical way and have them do a relay race to do their spelling list, or you might have them do an art project to practice their math facts, or you might have them, whatever it is that makes them learn better and build that confidence in them before you're asking them, because you do want to teach them the grit to sit down and go through the things that are not as pleasant, or take a ton of time to read and answer a question, because they are all standardized tests at the end of the year, and you want them to be able to sit through all that. But you build it up incrementally, and you build up that inspiration and that love for learning and that love for growth. And then you can teach them how to sit through the more unpleasant things that they're going to have to go through, like standardized tests and things like that.
Yes,
it's the nature of the beast.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm thinking, my mind is kind of just on rocket fuel right now. I'm kind of thinking about the different ways to apply this. I've got, let's say there's a classroom of 14 kids, and in there's this one particular boy, and when he gets jazzed up, he doesn't listen very well. He kind of goes around in circles, and he can't stop talking, and he just keeps moving around. And that inspires a couple other kids to get really energetic. And there's a little bit of chaos in the classroom. And if I'm a teacher who am passionate about these kids, and I'm super frustrated that this particular kid won't just sit still, then there are other ways than just discipline or just shut him down completely. Not just to let him run wild, but there are other ways to help find that creativity. It could be art projects, it could be relay races, it could be some form of creativity that you've just described. And I wonder how many teachers
and it involves a lot of hopefully most of them. I really think that teachers have that best intention. And it's hard to remember when you're in the moment. Sometimes you're just frazzled and you're just trying to get through the lesson and hit these objectives and the targets, right? Yet you're still wanting to not be like a total boo-boo butt to that kid, because clearly they're struggling with something. But it takes a lot of conversations with that kid and coming at it from an empathetic perspective. Hey, I noticed that you're having a hard time sitting down while I'm teaching. And I really want you to get this topic and this concept. And so what I would remind teachers to do is a couple things. One is keep their attention span in mind and teach them like coping strategies. Like for me, whenever I have to listen to somebody speak, and like I'm about to go into a meeting here right when we're done, I'm a doodler. I doodle, I note take, things like that, things that I need to do to keep myself moving so that I can stay engaged and I can retain the information a little bit better. And we try different strategies. That might not be the thing for that kid, but you can try it and see if it works. The other thing you want to do is empower those kids because they are seeking a way to be noticed. Oftentimes it is attention seeking behavior, things like that. So I do have a memory of teaching, this had to be like 10 or 11 years ago. And one of my kiddos was diagnosed with ADHD. He really, really, really had a hard time sitting down and had the best intentions, but would just constantly interrupt, get up, run around, things like that. And so we were talking about it, and I was actually going through my master's program at this time, and somebody had a great idea, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this with him. So you get kids' books, if you look it up, there are also other creators on social media and stuff like that that will highlight books that have main characters that have the similar issues that the kids have. So I got a bunch of like kid books where the main character had a hard time sitting still or staying attentive to a lesson and things like that. And then what you do is you have the kid teach the class about that particular issue. So I remember him getting up in front of the class and going like, and we got him all these resources. And he would say something like, do you guys ever sit down for too long and you start kind of getting antsy and you want to like move around? And everybody could relate. They raised their hands. And then he was like, that's how I feel, but like all the time. And it doesn't take me that long to start feeling that way, like maybe just a couple minutes. And so then when he was talking to I asked him first if he was comfortable with doing this, and he was. And then the kids then were empathizing with him and they understood a little bit more about where he was coming from. He's like, I'm not trying to make a mess of the class or anything like that. It's just, I really, really have a hard time sitting still. And so we're working through things to try to figure out how I can still work in a classroom setting, and it was really eye-opening for me because it inspired him to just take ownership of it and learn more about it and then teach his peers about it so that they were empathetic about what was happening.
I've taken a few notes in the last few minutes that's just been really, really amazing. And I'm going to take these back and journal about it and think about it. And one of the things that really stood out to me, I wrote down keeping their attention span in mind. And that hits me like a ton of bricks because every 8 minutes or 15 minutes, the kids want to go do something different. At least mine do, 8, 7, and 5 years old. So I can relate to that. And then you said doodling. And it's odd because as you said that, I'm looking around my office. My wife calls this like complete and utter chaos. I call it organized chaos or a symphony of my own masterpieces.
Sure.
Because I doodle all the time. What do you doodle, by the way? What's your doodling? Is it?
So my go-to is always like palm trees and a beach. I don't know why. Like that's just something that I mastered as a kid, and then that was what I would do. But like last year, it's funny. At the end of the year, we have to do this thing. It's like a showcase of learning, is what they call it. And we ask the kids to do it, and then they present what they learned. Like what were their goals? How did they reach them? And then they can choose a creative way to to talk about it. And the adults actually have to do it too. And we do it in our teacher meetings, and we all like set it up. So during my meetings last year, I started painting because I was zooming into most of these meetings. And so I had my paint station set up and I was like painting. And then I was like, I should do an animal that starts with every letter of the alphabet and make an alphabet book. And then I made an alphabet book with the paintings. And then it was just like about my growth that year and things like about it. And so that's the one I'm most proud of. And the most recent is just painting animals of different colors and different letters of the alphabet.
I want to
A is for aardvark.
thank you. I'm super inspired right now. Here's what I just wrote down. This is kind of crazy. We could kind of go in different directions, but one of the things I wrote down
Sure.
is, of course, we talked earlier. My first book comes out on March 8th, and that's an adult book. But I've also got a couple of kids' books that I am writing at this moment. And what you just inspired me to write down is my own alphabet book for kids of eternal optimism and A through Z and what that might mean. So I am appreciative
I would
of
love
that.
you for that. Love that for you. Do it. Yes.
I'm going to make a note that when that comes out, I'm going to reach out to you to collaborate on this if you're up for it, because you just inspired me with the idea.
That's exciting.
So this is cool.
Yes.
This is super cool. As I'm doodling, to finish the thought on doodling, I love to doodle because I don't want to break eye contact. I don't want to get on a laptop. I don't take notes on computers anymore. I always do it on my handwritten on the iPad because it's just, I remember better. But I always doodle arrows going in an upright direction or up direction or to the right direction. So normally I'm doodling arrows, and normally those arrows turn into animals. And just as an example today, the arrow has turned into, it's a snake. But in any event,
I love it. I love it so much. I wonder if it says something about people, like what they decide to doodle. Like my husband would do geometric shapes when he was in school. Like he would do like patterns.
Yes.
And then it would, and some people do Zentangles, and then you're doing arrows. I'm doing a beach scene. Like it's interesting. Like I wonder, there's probably a personality test out there. And if not, we should make one.
I like it. And I don't think this is just random blah, blah stuff. I think this is super important because we tend to remember things when there's some type of anchor attached to it. And I coach people when we fill out our one-page business plan every year for our goals, our targets for the year, as they handwrite that out, not just printing it out and typing it, as they have the template printed and they write on it, I invite them to write shapes on it, to draw, creative, like a celebration flag, like you're crossing the victory line here, or their favorite animal, or their favorite rocket ship, or their favorite whatever, to have a little bit of emotional anchor. Like right around my desk right here, there are so many little things, like including I got a heart right here, I got a smiley face over here. My school district client, it's a Rock Hill school, so they have their own little hashtag Rock Solid is their fight song. And we gave out like 3,000 rocks when we had our first assembly with all the teachers and the principals, 7 months ago. So in any event, I'm inspired by what we're talking about. I've already made a ton of notes.
I'm so glad.
So you started off with sharing something that was challenging. It was an experience in that very important time in life, 9, 10, 11 years old. It was expectations and grades and things, and socially with parents. So I'd love to go forward now and talk about kind of like your mission and your passion. And can you just share with us, why is education your chosen field, Taleen?
I was born with it. As silly as it sounds, I've known since I can remember that this was my calling in life, and I can't question it. I've never had anything else in mind. Like I've known through and through that teaching and education was my thing, right? So I went through a pretty traditional education in my upbringing, right? K through 12. And then when I went into college, I immediately went into a teaching program. So I was cohorted with 50 people at a public university, huge university, but I was with the same 50 people who knew that they wanted to do elementary education. And throughout this program, so I was 17 when I graduated high school. And so I'm 17 years old in other classrooms, taking notes, observing, writing lesson plans, and just knowing that this is what I want to do. And I'm looking at education being approached differently from different teachers that I'm observing, and at different levels. Like I even observed, we had a preschool on campus. It was interesting. They had like a two-way mirror and hanging microphones that the kids didn't know, but we would just sit behind the two-way mirror, observe, take notes on like how the interactions were going and things like that. And then we would be sent out to other schools in the area at varying socioeconomic statuses, varying grade levels, varying all these varying things, right? And then you're just kind of seeing what it is. And then in my senior year, I had to do my student teaching because I was getting my bachelor's and my credential at the same time.
Okay.
So in order to get your credential, you have to go through some student teaching. And so every day I would go, the first half of my student teaching was in a 4th grade class in a low socioeconomic status school. And she did some cool things with them. They had, programs come in. I remember there was one that was about animation, and they were teaching them how to do animation on a computer and things like that. And I thought, what a cool opportunity for kids to like dive into something that's not just strictly math, strictly language arts, whatever. You're doing something different, right?
Yeah.
And then the second school I went to was a 2nd grade class in a well-off neighborhood. And they had lots of parent participation. And like I happened to be there during Teacher Appreciation Week, and we got massages, and it was all the, and we had like a luncheon with belly dancers. It was a whole thing. Like it was amazing. But the thing I learned most about that school was 2 things. One is project-based learning. You can approach education in a very unique and meaningful and hands-on way where you're still meeting the goals and the standards and all of that stuff that you want the kids to do, but you're also allowing them a little bit of creativity in how they present their knowledge and their information, right? And so that was my first experience seeing that in action. And then because she used the curriculum kind of as like a guideline as to what content she was supposed to do, but then they would take it into something else. And I'll give you an example in just a second, because the second thing was how you use your parents to your benefit who want to be involved. So lots of parents do, I would argue that no matter what socioeconomic area you're in, parents want to help. They have that in them, and they might not have the opportunity to take time during the school day to come into your classroom and literally like run a center or do something like that.
Yes.
But you give them options of how to participate. So it could be, can you please cut all of these cardstock papers into squares because I'm going to need it for this project. I'm going to send it home with your kiddo. And then if you could just cut it while you're watching TV or something tonight, that would be so helpful. And things like that, right? So just a way to build that community and bring in all the stakeholders in a kid's education. It's huge. And it drives a lot of why I do what I do. Sorry. So then back to the project-based thing, because I'm going to turn this into a literal unit that I would like to actually like market and sell at some point.
Let's do it.
But, one of my lessons that I had to do for that 2nd grade class, there's a book called The Truth About the 3 Little Pigs, and it's the wolf's perspective about what happened with the 3 little pigs, right? So then the whole project was putting the wolf on trial. So everybody took a role, and like you had kids that were attorneys for the wolf, and you have kids that were attorneys for the pigs. You had somebody play the wolf, you had somebody play the pigs, and then whatever varying participants that you needed, everybody had a role. And then when they presented it, the parents would come in and they would be the jury. And then they had to decide whether or not the wolf was guilty or innocent. And then when they finished doing that, and then I was done with my student teaching experience, they actually asked my permission to take that lesson and turn it into a school play. Yeah. And then they did that. And then I came in and I watched the school play, and it was amazing. And so just to recreate educational experiences like that for my own children and for the kids that I have personally taught, and now the teachers that I'm teaching, and to just inspire them to kind of push it a little bit further, to make it more meaningful, make it more fun. You learned about, the justice system a little bit in that process. You were reading, you were analyzing, you were writing, you're doing all of these things. And it's not in your traditional, rote memorization, regurgitate whatever you memorized onto a piece of paper. It is deeper than that. It is more meaningful than that. That's my goal.
Wow.
I want to make it
that is
as
a
meaningful
lot.
As possible.
And I got a smile from ear to ear just thinking about all of this. Sounds super fun and entertaining and encouraging. When they told you that this was going to be a play, what was your feeling? Was there emotion?
I was honored. They were like, are you okay with this? And I was like, I'm honored that you even thought that was cool enough to turn into a play school-wide, And, I hadn't even started teaching yet in real life. I was 20 years old running this, and, but like I said, and not to toot my own horn, but I was born with this.
Yes.
I know what I know. It was just inherent, and I want to use that passion and that power for good. And like, I just want to make, and so I'm expanding my platform beyond my school. I started podcasts. I'm trying to build my other stuff, and
Podcast.
entrepreneurial
Nice.
skills don't come naturally to me. So it is a growth thing. It's a learning curve. That's the name of my podcast. It's a learning
hold on,
curve
pause.
for
Let's go
me.
over this.
Yeah.
Tell me about the podcast.
Okay.
What's the name? And like, just tell us about the podcast. Love to hear about this.
Sure. So my podcast is called The Learning Curve Education Conversations. And it was just a vehicle to be able to have conversations, to record these conversations that I was having with at least my colleagues and my friends, that I thought, I think a lot of people would get benefit from this, because I keep seeing things on like social media where things in education are demonized. This is happening in schools. This is happening in classrooms. I'm like, no, that's not true. Or that's a little bit true, but let's go into the nuances of it. Or success stories, or keeping it positive, but also being real about what the issues are that we're seeing in education and in classrooms, the shifts we've seen, and how to work with it. Things like post-pandemic teaching and AI being a part of, writing and things like that, right? And so we, depending on whoever the guest is, I've had a few authors on, I've had a few educators on, and a variety of people so far. But the commonality is just wanting to do better for our kids,
yes,
whatever that means. And if it means inspiring them to be the authors, or to be whatever it is that they need to be, lean into their strengths, right? But it's just, I felt that it was so necessary, because whenever you just go based off the papers, right? Like if you're just running the war through the newspapers and you're not in the trenches, you're probably misinformed about what's actually happening. And then you will be demonizing the people that are not in the same school of thought as you. And I don't appreciate that so much. And like, I do a hybrid approach to my kids' education. They're partially homeschooled and they partially go to a Montessori school. They do both. Okay. And then I teach in a public setting. So we see this variety of approaches to education, and it's not that one's better than the other. It just might be that it's a better fit for your kid to do one than the other. And it might be a better fit for your kid right now. And then it changes later because they're morphing and they're growing and they're doing things. And so to just inform everybody about the variety of educational approaches, and to not be like, homeschoolers are weird. And not necessarily.
That was the stigma 25 years ago, for sure. And now it's it's different now. Yeah.
Or or public schools are trying to like brainwash your children. No, if we could, we wouldn't do it with that. And so to just really provide context and to have more insightful conversations that involve more of the nuances that are out there. That's the idea.
Well, so you see things from several different angles. You see it from a homeschool, you see it from Montessori school, you see it from public school, and plus we have our own experience growing up. So from all of that, how might we best ascertain which learning style might be best for our kids at different ages? I mean, how do you just kind of send them there and see what happens? Or you notice certain thinking patterns or styles from kids around the age of 8, and then you recognize that's probably best for Montessori, probably best for public, or best for home. I mean, how do you think about that? Because I think a lot of our listeners are probably in that space where a lot of the kids are in a public school and they're doing okay, and we wonder if this is the best fit, maybe if there's a better fit. So how do you know, Taleen? I don't know. I don't think to ask the question really, because we just send our kids locally where it's convenient. We moved to this neighborhood because it's got a good school district. But we don't know if that's the best thing for them or not. They're doing okay, it would appear, right? But how do we know?
Yeah, and and if they're doing okay, sit tight. Yeah. It's fine, and it's totally fine. And so I would say that it involves conversations with like all of the stakeholders in their education. So if grandparents are involved and you respect their opinions, and like if teachers are involved and things like that, you got to kind of see what's going on. So like my personal experience with kids is sometimes the social aspect of a public school and how difficult it could be in certain neighborhoods and areas and things like that could be not serving your kid well. It could actually be doing some damage, right? or that public school actually is really providing them with all of these opportunities that you could not yourself provide them with. So it's great to send them there. And you just have to really lay out those ideas. Now in California, it's really interesting because you get stipend money to public school or to homeschool your kid through like public charters. So what happens is you can get money to get a curriculum depending on how the charter works. Our charter works where you can choose the curriculum that you want to teach your kid. And then you have taken it upon yourself to do that, but you have a credentialed teacher that's overseeing what you're doing and is kind of a touch point person that you're held responsible to and can answer your questions, right? And then whatever's left over from that stipend funding, you can spend on extracurriculars. So like my daughter's in ballet, my son's in tennis, like we're doing things that are outside of the scope of school. So they get these opportunities and experiences, but I also have a very strong village. I have very involved grandparents. My husband and I have relatively flexible schedules where we can kind of take turns. And then we do lean on the Montessori school sometimes to fill in the gaps for the socialization aspect of it. And that's just what works for us for now. And this might not be a forever solution. And so we really, I really want to ask people to think about who they have in their circle to help. Okay. If they think homeschooling is better for them, there are resources. There's likely people around you that are doing the same thing. You can lean into those pods, ask questions. If you're looking into public schools or private schools or whatever, I strongly recommend that you tour the school, feel the vibes. As silly as that sounds, does this sound like it's a great place for your kid or not? The school that I work at specifically is open concept. There are no walls and doors between the classrooms. And that can be very overwhelming for some people. And it's likely not a good fit for everybody, right? Because you have to be able to focus in and thrive in a collaborative setting. And that's the idea. Like I always tell people, like, think of the way Google is structured, right? Their offices, it's very open and people are just kind of working wherever. That's kind of how our school is structured. And so that jives well with a lot of people and it turns so many other people off. So to tour it, to spend time in it, to observe it, to see what it is that works best for you, and then try to make a plan and see who can help you go through that plan, you know?
I'm kind of cluing in on the idea of involve all the stakeholders, everyone that's present or that wants to be present, that you also want to be there, get their feedback, get their input on it, is what I'm really feeling and hearing so far.
Yeah.
So, Taleen, I'm looking at the clock here, and I know that we've got just a few minutes to go. So I would like to, share with our audience, where can they go to find out more about you? And I believe you actually have an offer for our audience as well. So please share with us how we can find you.
Sure. So I actually have a website, www.wildk5.com, WILDK5.com. It stands for What I Learned Daily, kindergarten through fifth grade. Okay. And there you would be able to access all of the podcast links. You can make an appointment with me to have a consultation to see, to have that conversation about what school setting might be right for you. There's a link to my Teachers Pay Teacher store. It's in its budding stages, but you can buy lessons and pre-made slides and things like that I've put in there for learning how to read. And then the offer is this. I actually have, I'm in the process of trying to create like a little baby curriculum, right? That's project-based and things like that. And I have a beta lesson that's a 4-week long lesson. And if you're interested, go ahead and shoot me an email at info@wildk5.com and I will send you that beta project for free.
Wow.
And just let me know how you like it. I want to know. I need feedback.
Fantastic. So that's someone who has a child between K5, or is it for K?
Yeah, this one's more geared towards kinder through first, but if you have older kids or you have kids who need more of a challenge, I can help provide that differentiation for you. It's my jam. I like being able to meet the needs of all the kids that we're serving. So,
so we've got your email info@wildk5.com. We've got your website, wildk5.com. And of course, we also have your podcast, The Learning Curve, Education Conversations. These are the
Yeah.
places, team, that you can find Miss Taleen Stevens, who is living in California, who has a multitude of educational experience, and you should definitely check her out because I've really enjoyed speaking with her today. And if you watch on YouTube, you can see her background. You can see that her conviction she speaks with, like, she's super easy to talk to. And she doesn't have what I would say sometimes you might have educators that might give off this pretentiousness a little bit. And she doesn't at all. She's like super easy to talk to, like a real life mom and a leader. So reach out to Taleen
Thank you.
in the ways that we've seen here on the show. And Taleen, we've made it to the final lightning round here to wrap up the next few minutes. So ding, ding, ding.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's wrap things up here. So I'd like to ask you about books. If there are one or two books that have had an impact on you in your life you'd recommend, what might be one or two book recommendations from you?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. I
know.
read so much. And, impact on my life. Oof. So, right now I'm listening to a book that's about money because I'm trying to just be more financially literate. And it's called Rich AF, and it's by Vivian Tu, I think is her last name. She's on social media as your rich BFF, whatever. And so that is helping me just kind of get my logistics in place. So I'm going to recommend that.
Excellent.
And then I think the other one is just a fun read, and I really liked it. And it's not that it changed my life, but I still think about that book to this day. And I think they turned it into a Netflix show, but it's called Behind Her Eyes. And it was so good. And it was like one of those edge of your seat till the last page. There was a twist that you did not see coming type of book. And it was just so good.
Wow.
And it just really inspired my personal journey of reading. And I'm like, oh, I want another one. Kind of been chasing that dragon, with all the books that I've been reading since then. But yeah.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Let's go to your music then. If there is a song or a genre or an artist that really just fills your bucket, fills your cup, and just inspires you, what is it that inspires you with music?
Okay. There's a lot. It's very hard. Same thing with the book. But my gut instinct is Jack Johnson. I really like his mellow music, the vibes. I remember seeing him at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was one of my favorite concerts I ever went to. I was just in the happiest place listening to him. And so, yeah. And just generally, if I pull up Pandora, I would choose Jack Johnson radio. So just things that are kind of along those lines. If I'm just trying to be in a good headspace and, just kind of easygoing and beachy almost,
Awesome. Okay. Well, last question.
I'm probably feeding it to my Californian here.
No, I love Jack Johnson too. That song Bubble Toes is on my driving list. So I love it. And I'm going to give you the last question, last word, then that's a wrap. Here it is. This is the Eternal Optimist podcast. When I say the word eternal optimist, what does that mean to you?
It means always looking at the bright side of things, because as difficult as life can get, there's always something to learn. There's always a silver lining. There's always a thing. I remember going through a very difficult loss in my family and thinking that this is the hardest thing I've gone through so far, right? And so, but thinking also, I'm probably going to be able to help somebody else go through their losses as they go on, because I've had this experience and I know what it feels like to go through a loss like this. It might sound hokey or silly, but I do firmly believe that there is always a good side to every experience. It is part of the human experience. You cannot have the good without the bad. If every day was a holiday, you wouldn't realize how special it was to have a holiday. Things like that. And it's hard to keep in mind when you're going through it, when you're in the thick of it, but definitely in retrospect, it's there, So there's that.